Yay Media Group.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Cornelius. You know, every Tuesday, we're going to talk about it. Talk About It Tuesdays. I have a new episode for you that is sure to just, I mean, it's amazing, y'all. We talk about authenticity. We're talking about, not caring what people think. We're talking about, community and all that kind of stuff. I got my boy, David Winston, who's joined me. But make sure that you're sharing, make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing to this. Now you can actually watch the videos live on Spotify. So make sure that you click, you watching, you sharing, all that kind of stuff. We love y'all. My wife's coming back here real soon. She had to do a little thing, but we're gonna get this thing done. Okay. All right. Introduces. I'm out. Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Cornelius back with another episode of This Is Life. And I have a special guest with me today. I hope you've been enjoying all the guests I've been having. But today I get a chance to be with my brother, man. This dude, David Winston. It's not, I just added the extra enunciation. It's just David Winston. Out of Chicago or Forest Park or wherever. He's in the Chicago area. But nevertheless, David, welcome to the podcast, brother. What's going on, homie?
Cornelius, man, thank you. And I just want to say, y'all, I made it. I've officially made it. I'm on Cornelius' podcast. I done made it in life, man. What's up, brother?
My guy. Hey, man, I'm cool. I wanted to have an in-depth discussion with you about a couple things. So I want to jump right into this. You and I, we've known each other for a couple of years. You've come to the retreat. And I mean, we've been able to have some really, really, dope conversations. One of the things that I've noticed about you just by observance is your willingness to now cling a little bit more to authenticity, to like who David is. Could you talk a little bit about what that journey has looked like from, for you? You have, I mean, if y'all don't know, his last name's Winston. His dad is Dr. Bill, the general of faith. I mean, you can't talk about church without talking about, your family and your lineage. So what does that journey of authenticity, I mean, what does it look like for you? And expound on that for me.
Absolutely. I think I had to learn how to discover my own value. I had to learn to value who I was and what was placed inside of me. And right. I think, for me, my own personal struggle was being able to articulate or study the value in everybody else, but not understand the value that I hold. Mm-hmm. And I think once I started to understand the value in me, who I am, what God has placed inside of me, gifts, talents, abilities, the anointing on me, whatever you want to call it, that I started to understand that, wait a minute, that there's something special and unique inside of me, regardless of what other people are doing, regardless of, what my parents or what my father has done. Thank God for what's happened in their lives. But there's something unique and special inside of me. And I heard one man say it like this: the quickest way to devalue something special is to compare it to something else. And so I had to step back from that comparison trap. I had to step back from looking at others, thinking that they hold more value than I hold. And I think that was really a journey that started, probably 10 years ago. And even maybe when I first got in ministry 15 years ago. And I really believe that, as God connected us up together, and I've told you this privately, and I'll say it again publicly, that I think you have really been used strategically, instrumentally in helping me to understand what it's like to live life authentically, because it's not just living a life like, well, I don't care what other people say. I mean, maybe that might be an element of it, but it's living a life valuing what's inside of you. And regardless of what other people say or do or their opinions, that doesn't change how you value you.
Right. So how does that, how does this transformation, how does this journey begin to affect the relationships around you? Because, I mean, not only are you a great speaker, I guess you're a good pastor. I don't know, but I mean, but you have to you exist between two different dimensions. I mean, you have a much older demographic, you have a younger demographic. Well, you three really, because you have a much older demographic, you have your own demographic, then you have the demographic that is coming behind you. So, how is this journey? How has it changed any of your relationships? Or if at all?
Yeah, I think something that happens inside of all of us is as we discover who we are, as I discover more of who I am, it continues to help me evolve. And, like we got our iPhones or Androids, you get the system upgrade, right? And the update. And it evolves. The operating system evolves to do things more efficiently or better or more securely. Or now you got artificial intelligence, right? We're humans that are designed to continue to evolve. So as we understand more of who we are, we evolve, which makes other people have to adjust to our dynamic expression. And what I've learned is that as you're evolving, and other people have to adjust to your expression, some people might be more comfortable with who you're becoming, and some people get more uncomfortable with who you're becoming. Some people, honestly, sometimes you got people in your corner around your circle who are more interested in the broken version of you. And then when you become more healthy, more healed, more whole, more stable, more secure, they get more uncomfortable with that version of you because it reminds them more of their insecurities now. And I think for me, I had to learn that different people are going to respond differently to my authentic expression. And just because they don't like what they see or they don't agree doesn't mean that they have any license to change who I am. And also that means that I have to be strong enough and confident enough that when some people, they don't like it, they don't agree, that I can still know that, hey, I am being true to who I am. And then there's other people who I think are probably in the more majority who are not only blessed, but are empowered or are encouraged through my authenticity, through continuing to be who I am, just like I've been encouraged through your authenticity. And I think it's interesting, as you mentioned, really three demographics. I got the older generation, the old saints, and they're so encouraged by me because I think they see me as a son, as a grandson. They see me through the lens of my father, like, oh, I know your daddy must be so proud of you. And then you have, my generation who are peers, right? You and me, and we're peers. And I think that we can mutually encourage each other. And then you have the younger generation that are like my kids' generation. And so they're looking up to me. But I think in each level, I am required to be authentically me, because that is the me that's going to help people and minister to people the most. It's not the pretend, it's the real.
Right. So has anybody cussed you out lately because of who you are?
I don't know if lately, but it's happened.
I want to say, I appreciate your words too. I never forget one of the first conversations we had in Wyoming. I won't divulge details, but I know we had this whole conversation about authenticity and about you being, who you are, and, stepping into, I think I even asked you a question. It was like, are you going to step into your dad's shoes? And, you being David, you gave this wise answer of, I don't want to step into his shoes. I want to wear my own, or something. I don't know, whatever it was. I just kind of quickly, I was like, oh, whatever. But it was good. And I think from there, we've been able to see this change. I feel like is so important into church culture right now. I'll go ahead.
And can I jump in, Cornelius, and say one thing? I think, just being real, I think one of the hardest parts about the position I occupy right now is that I'm getting a lot more visibility as my father had, some health issues last year, and thank God he's made a strong recovery, but I had to step in a lot. And so I immediately became a lot more visible, and I had a lot of people comment and say, like, I didn't know Bill Winston had a son, and I didn't know how to feel about that. But anyways,
hold up. You can't just say that and then we just go past that. How is it that, do you feel like the ministry was so consuming that it was only about Dr. Bill, or how was it that they wouldn't know that he had a son?
Yeah. I feel like the way that our culture has developed for the way we do ministry has been very centric on my father. And so I think being inside the ministry, obviously, of course, he has a son. He has a couple daughters too, and has a wife and, grandkids and stuff. But I think the way that we do ministry is very centralized on him as the prominent figure, which is not surprising because, he came up in the 90s and the early 2000s where the ministry was growing into prominence. And that was an era where ministry was built on personalities and was not built on the strength of culture or community. So those have been some interesting comments when people are kind of just discovering that Bill Winston has a son. And so it's like, okay, well, hey, that's cool. But, and the other side of my mind is like, is that to our detriment? Like,
is what?
That as a ministry, and not being critical of my father, just as a ministry, we haven't done enough of a job to help people know that there's a ministry family here. Has he not talked about like family enough? Have we not created a culture enough that you understand that there's family here and that's important? And I know he's mentioned me, before, and mentioned, his family and everything. But anyways, I think the point I was on the way to making was, I think the thing that bothers me the most now is having to calculate the way that I'm going about things and take into account the way that people will respond to it, knowing that I'm not my father. And I think in these last couple of years, I've become more and more aware of how we are different, even though, we're very similar and he raised me, but I think differently. I operate differently. The way we go about addressing things is different. Now, scriptures don't change. The word of God doesn't change, but even the way we interpret, the word of God, I have some differences, usually not big glaring differences, but there are some differences in the way that I interpret certain things. And I believe that it is because of part of the generation that I've grown up in. And so there's some differences there. And I think for me, the struggle is being my authentic self and having that authentic expression, but also not having such a stark contrast from my father and those who have grown up in that generation, and connecting to the ministry and hearing his familiar message, not drawing such a stark contrast that it's too much of a jolt, right? It's too hard for them to make that transition. And so I've had to be very wise. And I think the way that, whether it's doing a message or leading teams or articulating the way I think we should go about things in a way that is respectful toward him and what he has built, but yet is true to me and true to what I feel like God is telling me to do and the way he's telling me to do it.
Do you want to take over what he's built?
I do. And that's something that I wrestled with for a while. I know we
talked about it.
Yeah, we've had some conversations, as you just alluded to. Yeah, man. I feel like God has put that in my heart for me and my wife. And I think that that's part of the difference. I don't want to do it as the main central figure. It's me and Nikki. It's me and my wife together. And that gives me great joy. Cornelius, it gives me more joy to know that we'll be able to do it together than to say, oh, I get to be in leadership. I get to take over. I get to run it. I'm not super interested in that. I'm really, really excited about us doing it together, which is honestly a difference from generation to generation, right? You know, it was previous generations were a little bit more male dominated, but I think for the way we operate now in 2025 and beyond, I think that people really want to see that holistic approach, you know, of a couple or, you know, a family really approaching this thing together as a unit.
Wow. I do want to go. Before I go forward, I have something to ask you going forward. But before I go forward, I have to go backwards. You mentioned, you know, when talking about people who were like, "Well, I didn't know Bill Winston had a dad." You said something to the effect of, "I don't know how that made me feel." If you had to articulate into words how that made you feel, what would those words be?
Insignificant.
Mm. So how do you deal with that, you know, that feeling of insignificance, and have you dealt with it?
Oh, I've dealt with it. That feeling of insignificance. Okay, so let's go here. I think the opportunity to feel insignificant will never go away. I think we just get wiser and stronger and more discerning in the way that we respond toward those opportunities to feel insignificant.
Mm.
I mean, notice you can build a multi-million-dollar business, Cornelius, but if you're sitting in the room with others who have built $100 million businesses and beyond, there could be a temptation to feel like what you've done so far is insignificant, right?
Right.
I mean, I think the feelings of insignificance come at all of us. But I have dealt with it in knowing that what I have and what I hold, it may not have been for maybe the person who's like, oh, I didn't even know Bill Winston had a son. But maybe what I have and hold is for someone else, is for that next generation. Maybe it's not for them. Maybe it's for their kids.
Hmm.
And to know that my gift, what God has put inside of me, that has a built-in audience. And just because somebody outside of my audience now finally maybe acknowledges and says like, oh, you exist and you had something good to say? Oh, very good. That doesn't have to make me feel insignificant, because I know that there is an audience that not only will tolerate what I have to say, but wants to hear what I have to say. They want to pull on what's inside of me to be a blessing to them and encourage them in the way that God meant for it to encourage them. And so I think for me, I've had to refocus and say that, yeah, maybe I'll get those comments, but those comments pale in comparison to all the litany of testimonies and encouraging words and things that people have said that have been largely positive about what they've received from me, especially through this last year as my dad has been in recovery. And so those are the things that I want to focus on and centralize on, not necessarily so much the things that breed insignificance and insecurity.
Right. And I'm glad that, well, let me ask you this, for the person that's sitting there listening to this or watching this, who also feels insignificant. Because one of the reasons why I asked you the question is because I'm confident that there are people who are out there who feel insignificant, who feel like you know, they're hidden. I mean, I wrote a book years ago called Overlooked, because I felt overlooked. You know, I felt like God had just kind of went over me to go with everybody else. And it's almost that the whole, you know, Samuel going to Jesse, and then Jesse lines up all his boys. And then it's like, you know, it takes for God to tell Samuel, like, hold up, this ain't everybody. It's almost like, you know, you forgot about me. I'm the one that's insignificant. I'm the one out with the sheep, but I'm the one that's chosen. So, you know, for those people who are listening, who also feel insignificant, they also feel overlooked. I mean, what is that word of encouragement for them?
That word of encouragement is, there's something significant inside of each and every one of us. And don't determine your value by trying to use someone else's skills, ability, or gift as your metric. That's the worst way to determine value. I think the best thing you can do is determine what is something that you can do. What is a passion inside of you? What is a part of you that you can give the world that just even in a small way, you can leave people better than how they were before they encountered you. And I think a lot of times fear, insecurity, and doubt makes us hide and shrink back. It makes us put our gifts and abilities under the table. It makes us, lean back into the crowd instead of stepping out and stepping forward and being bold to let the world adjust to our dynamic expression of who we are. And I think the best thing you can do is, if you're struggling with insignificance, this is going to sound crazy, do something that puts you out there that makes somebody respond to you. And so I don't know what that would be, right? Maybe that could be starting a podcast like we're doing right here, right? Maybe that's writing a book. Maybe that's volunteering to lead something. Maybe that's doing something in your ministry. Maybe that's being on the praise and worship team, or maybe that's volunteering in some capacity, or maybe it's starting a recovery group. Do something that puts you out there, that puts a demand on the potential inside of you, that allows people to respond to what you're putting forward. Because a lot of times people discount themselves before they even step up into the fight, into the race, or step up into something that would have people to respond to them. And, insecurity, it's almost like insecurity predetermines how people are going to respond to us before we give people an opportunity to respond to us. And so I've learned that, I just got to step up and allow somebody to respond to what I got and what I'm trying to offer. Some people are going to like it. Some people won't. But I can guarantee you this: your audience will never discover who you are if you are hiding.
I love that. And just for clarification, you're saying to do something that is well-intentioned to jump out there. And I don't, because it could be construed with some of my audience, some of my new audience, and I love y'all, but he ain't saying go become a stripper or start an OnlyFans.
No,
because that could also put you out there. And if these egg prices keep going up, I may have to start my own. But that's another podcast for another day. But
I'm talking about.
If that's how you put yourself out there, Pastor David just said, I want y'all to know, Pastor David.
Come on,
Pastor David Winston just said, if it takes you to put yourself.
No, keep your clothes on. Stay out of Magic City, okay? So,
look, Magic City, brother, they got these Lou William wings.
Here you go.
So what they're lemon pepper wings, but they add hot wing sauce to them. And when you get them, you got to get them the Atlanta way. You got to get them fried hard and wet. Fried hard and wet. You got to get fried hard and wet. Because when they wet, it's just the sauce and stuff is just drippy. It's a whole thing. But nevertheless, Pastor David just said you need to jump into something that people can see you. So, and then he came back and said, keep your clothes on, which we want you to keep your clothes on. But okay, so kind of going to another side of this. We mentioned retreats earlier, and that was I knew of you before, but I didn't know you.
Yeah.
And I invited you out to a retreat in Wyoming, and I was shocked when you said you would come. Let me ask you this question. Why did you agree to come?
Man, let me tell you how God set up that moment. At the end of 2020, I'll make a long story short. End of 2020, I can only describe where I was as drowning. I was alive and living, and on the outside, everything was going well, right? And we were in the middle of pandemic, and I know people were losing their jobs and their income and all that kind of crazy stuff. Some people were losing their health, losing family members. Fortunately, I didn't have to go through none of that. But yet inside, I was drowning, and I was just in a not good space mentally. And my wife, she noticed it as a good wife and said, let me get you connected to a good therapist. I was like, okay. I started, doing that, and I started to recognize some unhealthy things in my life. And I also started to recognize that there was a big void of community in my life. See, one thing I think that I was taught a lot of growing up, thank God, was I was taught faith, right? I was taught faith, how to believe God, how to trust in the word of God, put his word to work, and trust in the promises of God. But I wasn't taught a lot about community and the importance of community and how to be purposeful about healthy community around you. And that was something that I really lacked. And I think it wasn't until that came to my awareness that I understood that isolation was the thing that was really killing me.
Wow.
And it took a pandemic, I think, for maybe a lot of people to realize that in different ways. But when you reached out, it was actually in the midst of me getting those revelations. And so, like I said, it was a divine setup that I realized I needed community. Here you were, you invited me. And I remember I told you, I said 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would never have come to this because I would have been too busy, right? And I wouldn't have put a priority on what you were offering through community. But because I noticed how desperately I needed it, it was a no-brainer. I had to be there. And I remember you're surprised that I actually showed up.
I was shocked. I told my wife, I said, David Winston. And she was like, Bill Winston's son? I was like, yeah, he said he's going to come. And she was like, does he know that? My wife was like, does he know that? And I was like, I don't know. I said, but we're going to see when we get there. I have no idea. And it was a shock. It was a shock that you decided to come. But so now, from someone who's come and experienced it, what is it that you pull away from? Because you mentioned something that I get a lot of, and it's that I know that men need it, because I was at a place in my life in 2018 when I got invited to one when I needed it. But you said if you had invited me 3 or 4 years before, I would have been too busy and I wouldn't have made it a priority. That becomes a big issue, because I know that men need it, but men just don't see it as something they really want to invest in and make it a priority. Since you've come, since 2021, you've continued to make investment and continuing to attend. And I know that you're healthier now. Your schedule is not lighter. You're stepping into new roles. You're entering into new demands of leadership. So, with all of that still happening, why is it that you continue to make the time to still come back to the table?
That first year I came to the retreat, I remember I was standing by the river and I was just having some morning time alone with God. And I remember he spoke to me that first year and said, come back every single year. No matter what's going on in life, no matter where you're at, no matter how busy your schedule gets, come back every year. And I think the most important lesson that first year taught me and that first trip taught me wasn't something that somebody specifically did or said. It was more so what was felt. I walked away that week feeling like I was more filled than I had been in a long time. And when I say filled, I mean my emotional and mental wellness, if we can call it a cup, right? I came there and I was at 10%. I mean, I was low, I was depleted, I needed help, I needed wholeness, healing. And I just left feeling so high, so good, spiritually high, like, just emotionally full. Yeah, you gotta make that distinction nowadays. Spiritually high. And so I left feeling so good. And I remember getting home and I was like, man, like, why wouldn't everybody want this? And I remember my wife saw such a difference, and I seemed so light and just so carefree. And I remember the distinct difference coming and then leaving and knowing that it was community. Like, I had never gone to a place where I had bonded with guys, had deep conversations, talked about some things that I never talk about. Even the ministry friends, right?
Right.
Cried with some guys, helped some guys, had some guys help me. I mean, just the conversations we had, man, they were transformational. And it wasn't forced. It wasn't contrived. It just happened. And I learned the importance of community. And I think I learned what it really felt like to be fully seen and fully loved.
Jesus. Wow. That last piece is impactful to me because, I mean, as you know, for the retreat, it is set up in such a way that it is, when I tell guys, when they tell me to explain it, I explain it as church in the wild.
Yeah.
Because there are no sessions. There's no preaching. There's no 5 a.m. prayer time.
Yeah. And that's what shocked me.
Yeah. It's none of
I was like, where's the agenda?
There's no agenda. So literally you get there and it's just, when you wake up, breakfast is ready at 8:30, but if you can't eat at 8:30, if you wake up at 10 o'clock, the chef is there and the chef will make you some food.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want to spend the whole day like you by the river with a cup of coffee by yourself, you can. If you want to go horseback riding, you can. If you want to go and, take your shirt off and take an axe and chop wood for 6 hours, you can.
Yeah.
If you just want to go sit out in the sun, and sunbathe for 2 hours, if you want to go work out, if you want to go for a hike, if you want to go for a run, like you can, and you're not obligated or anything, but it's so amazing how God meets each and every one of us in the wilderness,
man.
And it's literally church in the wild. Like God literally met you at a river. And the reason why it's so special to me is because we try our best to fabricate. And we try our best to fabricate and create this type of environment for God to meet us, in conference spaces, whatever. We try to create that, like God's going to meet us here. And it's just the simplicity of just showing up to this place and having God to just meet us there. Man. And man, I'll go ahead.
And I know I'm cutting you off, but I'm just reliving that first year moment. It was such a refreshing change to show up and not have to be responsible for anything.
Wow.
Because even when you show up to a conference that you're not running, you're still responsible at a level, right?
Right.
Maybe you're responsible for getting to all of the sessions. Maybe you're responsible for meeting and connecting with people, or you're responsible for being a representative of the ministry that you represent to other people that you have, ministry connection with. But to go someplace, to not have an agenda, to not have a schedule, man, Cornelius, you blew my mind the first year when I was like, okay, so what's the schedule? What's the itinerary? And you're like, it's nothing. I was like, what you mean? Like, I thought you was joking. I said, what you mean nothing? And he said, no, it's nothing. It's whatever you want it to be.
Right.
And I think that right there was so freeing, coupled with the fact that here's other guys who are at this retreat who are here and their only job is to just serve you. Mm-hmm. And I think because I am a acts of service person, love language person, I think that touched me at such a deep level to see them selflessly serve us as camp attendees all week. Mm-hmm. Man, that really blessed me. And to know that, hey, they're there to just create an experience that you just don't have to do anything. And the fact that we didn't have cell phone service, that helped too, right? And so you're disconnected, you're being served, you're being loved. And it's like when you get that level of clarity, I feel like life becomes more clear.
Oh, yeah.
And to your point, it's like we're trying to fabricate sometimes, and I use that word specifically, sometimes we're trying to fabricate these environments in the midst of too much busyness.
Yeah.
And that's my pet peeve. Like, my pet peeve is when people try to make me so busy that it's like, it's hard to hear from God because I'm running around trying to do everything. And then they're like, what's the word from the Lord? And I'm like, the word from the Lord is shut up and leave me alone so I can hear God to give you the word of the Lord.
Yeah. For years, man, I went to these pastors' conferences where I was, I was told these, if you're burnt out, you need to go. And I would go, and I mean, you know how these things go. It's, you go to them, and it's a session that starts at 9 a.m. It's a breakout sessions all day.
Yeah.
And then you have a session that goes at 7:30 p.m. and that session go until 9 o'clock. By the time you get finished, you're so worn out that you don't really have time. You want to go and hang out with your friends or go have dinner or go do something else. And it's just like, you're so worn out, and you're connecting with this person. Oh, let me get your number here. And oh, I saw you on social media here. And oh, I did this. We should do this. You should come preach in my church. And it's just like, it's so much that you just like, you're so drained that by the time you leave, it's like, okay, I need a vacation from the conference.
Yeah.
And then I hear these people from the stage, David, and I would just feel so disenchanted, because I'm just like, there's such a disconnect between what you think this is from being on the stage to what I'm feeling right now, sitting in the seats. And so to be able to have that type of environment that I can honestly say you've helped to create with these guys, and to just be. Has been absolutely amazing. I got one more question for you, David, and then I'll let you go. But for those individuals who are listening, and I know we talked about authenticity, we talked about what that journey looks like. But one of the big questions, I do a Q&A on my Insta story every Monday, and one of the questions. Oh, thank you, brother. One of the questions that I get all the time, it never fails. This is the one I get the most of, and that is, how do I get to a point where I truly just live, just in my most authentic self? You've been on that journey. You know what that journey is. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think it starts first again with value, valuing who you are and what you carry. I think next, you got to end the comparison. That comparison is a trap that tries to get you to slowly devalue who you are and what you carry. And so stopping the comparison, also understanding that there's a potential inside of you, that there's gifts and talents inside of you, but a lot of times they're very raw. And especially if you haven't pushed yourself to do anything, or you haven't allowed others, mentors and other leaders, pastors, whoever around you to encourage you, to push you to do something that you didn't think you could do, then I would be willing to bet that there's a lot more inside of you than you are even aware of. I like to say it like this: potential is like toothpaste. It doesn't just fall out, it has to be pushed out. And until you are pushed, greatness remains concealed even from you. And so put yourself in some positions where you have to place a demand on what's inside of you to do more than what you think you can do. And then I think, one of the last things is, I think that you have to give yourself permission to be yourself. And I think for years, in different ways, I felt like I had to be this way or that way. And I'll use something that's a very trivial example. Like, my dad has been a suit and tie wearer for as many years as I can remember, right? Yeah. And so he wears a suit, the tie, the suspenders, the whole deal. He used to wear the 3-piece suits. And so I would wear that. But what I've found here over the last 2-3 years is that I feel like it doesn't fit for me, even though I have suits that fit. And I'll wear them, from time to time. But I've started to feel like, hey, my go-to is maybe a turtleneck, or maybe a crew neck sweater or something. I dress a little bit more casually than my father dresses, and it makes me feel more like me. Like, that's my lane. And when I feel like me, I've found that I'm actually a lot less inhibited to give people the revelation, the wisdom, and what's on my heart that God has given me for the people.
Right.
And so that's, one illustration, one example of just be you, and for some people, suit and tie is their thing, but it's not my thing. And so I find that things flow a lot easier for me when I do what I feel like is comfortable or native for me to do. And Cornelius, unfortunately, I think some people have studied others so long, whether it's social media or those around them, that they haven't even taken time to step out and try something that's different, that suits them better.
Right.
You know, everybody else might be posting that, but maybe God is telling you to post this and you feel more comfortable in this lane. Well, just try it. Just see what happens. And, you know, follow that leading, you know, follow that nudge that you're feeling inside. And I believe that when you do those things and put all those things together, you'll find yourself living an authentic life. And something that I talk about in a book that I wrote called Authentic, The Confidence to Be Yourself, the Courage to Release Your Greatness, is the fact that you are somebody's future favorite waiting to be discovered.
Jesus.
There's going to come a day that you're going to be somebody's favorite expression of the thing you do. I'm not saying it's going to be 100 million people. I know everybody likes to say that, oh, I'm going to be famous. No, I'm not talking about that. But there's somebody who's going to validate what you have by saying, man, you do it the way that is the best for me. And thank you for doing it the way you do it. But they can't discover that unless you take courage and step out and be authentic to who you are.
How can they get the book?
Absolutely. You can go on Amazon right now. You can go on Amazon and get your copy. You can go to my website, davidswinston.com, and you can see the links to grab your copy as well.
How can they be connected with you through what is it? Instagram, Facebook?
Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X. David S. Winston. David S. Winston. And go check out my YouTube channel as well. Got a lot of great content out there also.
What you be doing on YouTube?
Oh man, I post all of my messages on YouTube.
Okay. Gotcha.
I actually just started something called the Winner's Circle, which is more like it's a membership group, so it's a closed community. But I do weekly live videos. We talk about the Word of God. We talk about Christ. We talk about culture, and I'm giving a lot of like my personal insights and interpretations, and even opinions about different things. And so it's a group that's growing, but I love that group, man. And I think it's becoming exactly what God told me to make it. And that's another thing that was kind of scary, right? Is to do it. I started it toward the beginning of the year, maybe at the beginning of February. And God told me, hey, do this. And you're going to pick a subject every week. Maybe you'll have a couple scriptures and then just flow. And that made me a little nervous, Cornelius, because I'm actually more of a like planned, preparing type person. And so I like to have the outlines, right? I like to have all the notes.
I know.
But God is stretching me, right? He's telling me to get out of my comfort zone. So he said, nope, no notes, just flow. And I was like, what? Just flow? But it's been a blessing to others. And so I'm practicing what I preach.
I love that. Well, David, I appreciate you for coming on. I still think you need to pray and ask God about me being your assistant.
Hey, come on.
I cuss a little bit, but we can make it work.
No, we need you.
But man, I appreciate you. I look forward to being with you in Wyoming. I am coming on the retreat now.
Oh yes,
I know. I am going to be there.
Prayers have been answered. Thank you, God.
I'm going to be there with you. So we're going to have a good time in Wyoming this year. And if you're out there, if you're male looking for a community, you want to become a part of our retreat. We have one coming up in Wyoming. It is April the 28th through May 2nd. You can go to sabbathfoundation.com to get more information about it, or you can contact me through any of my social media. Well, not any of them, but just main one is probably Instagram. If you send me a Facebook message or send me some on X, I probably ain't gonna never see it. So on Instagram, this is Cornelius, and I'll be. We can respond back to your DM, something like that. But so David, I appreciate you joining me, man. Thank you so much for being a part of this. All right,
man. Love you, brother. Thank you.
Love you too.
God bless everybody.
All right. God bless, bro. Bye.